Okay, today let's talk about training considerations for those that have longer arms and longer legs. This is not so much a collection of best practices as it is just some tips and tricks, things we've learned over the years that may help you if you have longer limbs, may help you get a little more out of your workout. So we're gonna break this down a little bit by movement pattern. The first thing is, for most core work, that includes anterior core, that includes carries, that could include rotational work, that could include things like side planks. Most of this stuff probably won't be affected by limb length. You do have to move your arms a little bit further, I guess, if you have longer arms and you're doing like an ab wheel, but generally speaking, limb length probably won't affect these things too much. The next category would be more of our upper body rowing. That could be one arm dumbbell rows, could be chin-ups, could be barbell rows. Now, aside from the fact that you have to move the weight further, this is also another category of exercises that doesn't seem to really be affected by limb length too much. Obviously, you have to set things up. If you're doing chest supported rows, maybe seal rows off of a more traditional bench, like an incline bench, you may have to put the incline higher. If you're doing something like chin-ups, you need to have a bar that's tall enough. Our bars in here are not tall enough for everybody, so when we have people that are taller that are working on chin-ups, they have to pick their feet up behind them, or sometimes we have to set up the band in a slightly different way because they have longer arms and longer legs and they hit the floor. The other thing is with barbell rows, that might be an exercise that is a little bit harder to do with longer arms. You may find yourself hitting the ground more quickly, or you'll hit it more frequently with longer arms. That can actually be a benefit. Sometimes when you have short arms, barbell rows can be hard to do because it's hard to know whether you should be going all the way down to the ground or if you should be pausing once your arms are all the way extended. But with a traditional barbell row, having longer arms might actually be a benefit because then you can actually dead stop on the ground every time, or at least have this nice consistent place to hit the plates, and, so you can keep your range of motion really consistent. Now, the next big three movement patterns we're going to talk about are your upper body pressing, your squatting, and your deadlifting. We'll do upper body pressing first. When it comes to having really long arms, aside, again, kind of like rowing, aside from having the distance be longer, which makes things a little bit tougher because you're just doing more work because the distance is longer. Aside from having a longer distance, when it comes to barbell pressing, the only thing that we really notice is that you may have to have a wider grip than a friend or someone you're working out with that has shorter arms. So grip width will vary a lot, but that's more of just an individual comfort thing in the first place. Some people are naturally always going to be more comfortable with wider grips versus more narrow grips, and that, again, is very individual. And so if you're doing, let's say, if you're doing like a bench press intensive program, and you're doing a medium, narrow, and wide grip, that's going to vary for you as much as it varies for me and anybody else. The next exercise pattern we'll talk about is squatting. One of the major tips and tricks that we find with squatting is that when it comes to having really long legs, especially long femurs in particular, we find that squatting with a wider stance seems to help. This is something I found continuously over the years. Having a slightly wider stance, what it allows you to do is spread your, abduct your legs. It spreads your legs out a little bit, spread your femurs out to more of an angle. And what it does is it prevents your longer femurs from pushing you back too much, which causes you to lean forward. So I'm not saying that your feet have to be super wide like a sumo deadlift stance, but taking the feet out a little bit with longer legs, again, allows you to spread the legs just a little bit so that you can keep yourself more centered over your feet. And we find this pretty consistently for people with longer femurs. And this goes for all different squat positions, back squat, front squat, safety bar squat. A little bit of a wider stance we find can help a lot. Now, the next movement pattern is going to be the deadlift. This is one that having long arms can be extremely advantageous. However, having really long arms at a deadlift also means that you're probably going to hit the floor much sooner. And you may find that if you're looking to deadlift in more of a bodybuilding style, in the sense that you're deadlifting maybe not for a 1 rep max like in powerlifting, but you're deadlifting more to build the hamstrings and the glutes, you may find that you need to, one, perform more Romanian deadlifts, something that's a little more hip hinge specific. Two, you may also find that deadlifting off of a platform helps you. Again, if you have really long arms, you may find that you're constantly hitting the floor with the plates on the bar, especially if you have good mobility through your hips. And so you may find that doing RDLs off of something like a stable elevated surface may be more effective in hitting your posterior chain. Last thing I'll say is when it comes to lunges and split squats, something that we notice a lot is that sometimes people with longer legs, of course, need to have just a wider stance, bigger steps. Sometimes when you're doing split squats or lunges, if they're being demonstrated to you or you're working out with somebody else, sometimes you'll find yourself taking steps that are a similar length, similar distance to what they are. And this is, again, kind of like the bench press grip width. You got to find something individually that's comfortable for your body. So, and again, I mean, the biggest thing with having longer arms, longer limbs is you're gonna have to set up almost every machine differently, no different than if you were taller or shorter. So there are lots of other things to go into it. But here are just a couple tips and tricks, and I hope that helps.